Welcome into BPN Weekly, everybody, and a very happy Father's Day to all our fathers listening. My name is Benson Fector, and I will be the host of your show today. No matter how you're listening, live, archived, or wherever you're listening from, we appreciate it and welcome into the Baseball Podcast Network's national podcast. If you love baseball, you've came to the right place, and I hope you enjoy the next hour of fun-filled, energetic baseball talk brought to you by yours truly. So let's get into what we usually do here on the show. If you're new to the show, what we started off with is a look at the weekly standings, see what's changed up, and then we take a look at the playoff picture and get into a what if the season were to end today. So just taking a look at the playoff picture right now. In the National League, we do have a change in the NL East. The Braves are now atop the National League East. They're sitting at 42-30. The Phillies 39-32, 2.5 back now. The rest of the division is the same. Mets 7.5 back, Nationals 8.5 back, and the Marlins 15.5 back. In the NL Central, we do have a change. The Cubs and the Brewers are now tied atop the NL Central, both at 39-31. The rest of the division holds true. The Cardinals 3 games back, Pirates 7.5 back, and the Reds in last at 8 games back. In the National League West, Dodgers are still top of the division. A change to note, the Rockies are now all alone in second at 9.5 back. Diamondbacks now in third at 10 back. Rest of the division is the same. Padres 13 back, and the Giants in last at 15.5 back. In regards to the National League wildcard standings, change to note, for that first NL wildcard spot, it would be the loser of an NL Central tiebreaker game. So let's say the Cubs win a game 163, the Brewers would then have that first wildcard spot, and they'd have half game up on the Phillies, which is also new that they hold that second wildcard spot. In regards to the teams chasing them, we got the Rockies a game and a half back, the Diamondbacks 2 back. A couple changes, the Cardinals hopped up a spot, they're now 2.5 back. Mets fallen back to 5 back of that spot, and the Padres also have fallen to 5 back of the second National League wildcard spot. In the American League, take a look at the AL East. Last week, the Yankees and the Rays were tied top of the division. The Yankees have separated themselves by a half a game, sitting at 43-27. The Rays at 43-28. The rest of the division holds true. The Red Sox 6 back in third place. Blue Jays 17.5 back in fourth, and the Orioles 22 games back in last place. In the American League Central, no changes to note. Twins still atop of the division, leading the Indians by 10.5 games. And third, the White Sox 13.5 back. Fourth, the Tigers 21.5 back. And in the basement in the AL Central, we've got the Royals 25.5 games back. Also, no changes to note in the American League West, as the Astros still stand atop of the division, 9 games up on the Texas Rangers. Oakland, the A's in third, 11.5 back. The Angels, 13 back in fourth. And the Mariners in last, sitting at 19 games back. In the American League wildcard, a change to note. The Rays now, hold that spot alone. That first wildcard spot at 4.5 games up. And, last week I was doing some thinking. I was like, okay, you're going to have whoever wins that AL East, they're going to win it, and then the second place team, the team that doesn't win the East between the Rays and the Yankees, are going to hold that first wild card spot. But with the week that the Texas Rangers have had, I think the Rangers could potentially, and really, I think the Rangers are the team that could take that first wild card spot, and I think the Rays are now susceptible, or whoever loses that AL East spot, to a team like the Indians, who are a game back, the Red Sox a game back, the A's 2.5 back, Angels 4 back, White Sox 4 back. So really, if you look at the Yankees, the Rays, the Rangers, Indians, Red Sox, A's, Angels, and White Sox, it's sort of wide open in there. Now, there are certainly fluctuations in that mix. You have a pretty wide variety, as the Yankees, for example, are 8.5 games up on like an Angels or a White Sox team, but that's not insurmountable, right? So I definitely think that there are changes in there, and just changes to note in that American League wildcard race. The Indians are now a game back, as well as the Red Sox, and the Angels and the White Sox have fallen to 4 games back each. So let's take a look at the playoff picture. Let's have some fun with that. Last week I had the Milwaukee Brewers, beating the Texas Rangers in 7 games in the World Series. So let's take a look to see what I have this week in Benson's special of what would happen if the season were to end today. So let's take a look at the National League first. And the National League Central tiebreaker game 163, between the Cubs and the Brewers, you would most likely see John Lester going for the Cubs. He holds a 2.51 postseason ERA, going up against Brandon Woodruff for the Brewers, a 2.19 postseason ERA. This game would be in Wrigley Field just based on some tiebreakers. Now, of course, this could change between now and the rest of the season, and the odds of them having a second consecutive game 163 are also slim. And who knows, the Cardinals could even win that division. So a lot of variables to play with here, but we like doing if the season were to end today, and if the season were to end today, these two would be playing game 163s. And in that, it's a tough decision having it be in Wrigley Field, but the Brewers did it last year. I think they could repeat again. I've got the Brewers winning the National League Central. So in the NL wildcard game, it would be the Cubs and the Phillies. Going for the Cubs in that game would be Yu Darvish, a 5.81 postseason ERA, going up against Aaron Nola, who has no postseason experience. This game would be in Wrigley Field. And the reason why they'd have to go Yu Darvish in this situation would because they would have had to use Lester in that game 163. So it sort of screws up the rotation-wise. But this game is in Wrigley Field, and the Cubs experienced a similar situation in 2018 when it seemed like they had the National League Central, and the Brewers stormed back, won that game 163, and the Cubs had to play the Rockies in hosting the NL wildcard game. It'd be a similar situation right now, and they'd have to go with a guy like Yu Darvish, which he doesn't have that postseason pedigree. But Aaron Nola, he's not having the same season as he's had. The Phillies don't necessarily have the pitching to match them, and not the offense to match them. So I got the Cubs winning that wildcard game at home, not having a repeat of 2018. Let's take a look at the American League side, American League wildcard game. We would see the Tampa Bay Rays hosting the Texas Rangers. In that game, you'd see Blake Snell for the Rays going up against Mike Minor for the Rangers. Blake Snell doesn't have any postseason experience. However, he did win the Cy Young Award in 2018. Mike Minor does have elite postseason experience, as we discussed on the show last week, with a 1.42 postseason ERA. And again, this game is in Tampa, and I'm sure the Rays would actually draw a crowd for this game, given that they haven't drawn any crowds for the majority of their games so far in the regular season. And in this battle, it's interesting. These two teams are very interesting. I wouldn't say the Rays are necessarily a surprise because they won 90 games, but the Rangers are a huge surprise, sitting at 38-32 right now, led by their guy Mike Minor. I think Mike Minor would go into Tampa and he would get that win. I got the Rangers moving on to take on the Astros in the American League Division Series. Let's take a look at those ALDS series. So the first one would be between the Twins and the Yankees. So the Twins would have home field advantage in this series. And in Game 1, you'd be likely to see Jose Barrios going up against James Paxton. I like Barrios winning that game at home. Game 2, you'd see Michael Pineda going up against Masahiro Tanaka. Pineda, the former Yankee, but Tanaka has elite postseason stuff. I like the Yankees knotting up the series at a game apiece. In Game 3, you'd see Kyle Gibson going up against J.A. Happ. J.A. Happ's postseason numbers are shaky at best. Kyle Gibson doesn't have that postseason experience. This game would be in the Bronx. I got the Yankees. And again, we don't revisit pitching matchups, so then we take a look at, the star power for each team. So the Twins are led by Jorge Polanco and Byron Buxton, and the Yankees are led by DJ LeMahieu and Gary Sanchez. Polanco and Buxton are both better than LeMahieu and Sanchez. I've got the Twins pulling this series out in 5 games, heading on to the American League Championship Series. On the other side of the American League, we've got a rematch from last week between the Astros and the Rangers. Game 1, we'd see Justin Verlander going up against Ariel Jurado because Mike Minor would have had to start that AL wildcard game. I've got Verlander taking that at home. Game 2, we've got Garrett Cole going up against Mike Minor. I've got Mike Minor taking that game, evening up the series. Game 3 in Texas, we've got Framber Valdez for the Astros going up against Lance Lynn. For the Rangers, I like Lance Lynn, his experience in Arlington, giving the Rangers a 2-1 lead. And then I've got the Rangers closing it out at home, just as I had last week. I've got Rangers in 4, Mike Minor taking down Justin Verlander in that final 4-game set. So heading on to the American League Championship Series, for me, I've got the Twins and the Rangers. A little bit different than last week. Last week I had the Yankees and the Rangers. I like the Twins this week, so we'll go with that. In the National League side of things, NLDS series, we've got Braves and the Brewers. Game 1, we'd see Mike Soroka going up against Zach Davies. Davies has elite postseason experience. Soroka doesn't have any. I've got Davies and the Brewers taking Game 1 in Atlanta. Game 2, Julio Teheran going up against Brandon Woodruff. Teheran's been bounced around in the playoffs, a 12.46 postseason ERA. Woodruff's been great in the postseason at 2.19. I've got the Brewers taking a 2-0 series lead. Game 3, we've got Max Fried going up against Jimmy Nelson. Both have been, Max Fried has had his moments so far in 2018. Jimmy Nelson is just coming back. But I've got the Braves going into Milwaukee and taking that game, making it 2-1. And then in Game 4 of the series, seeing Soroka and Woodruff going up against each other. I see the Brewers taking this series in 4 games, moving on to the National League Championship Series. On the other side of the National League, we've got the Dodgers and the Cubs. Game 1, we'd see Clayton Kershaw going up against Jose Quintana because of that Game 163 with Lester, and both have struggled in the postseason, but I like Kershaw taking that Game 1 at home. Game 2, we'd see Rich Hill going up against John Lester. Both have been great in the postseason, but Lester has been better. I like the Cubs evening up the series. Game 3, we'd see Walker Buehler going up against Yu Darvish. Walker Buehler's been great in the postseason. Yu Darvish, not so much. I've got the Dodgers taking a 2-1 series lead. In Game 4, that would be, we have Kershaw-Lester, a classic postseason battle. But this game, again, Kershaw doesn't have that good postseason experience Lester does. I got a 2-2 tie, and then Game 5, we'd see Rich Hill taking on Yu Darvish. I've got the Dodgers winning that series in 5, going to take on the Brewers in a rematch of the 2018 National League Championship Series. Let's take a look at the ALCS now. It's the Twins and the Rangers. Game 1, we'd see Jose Barrios taking on Mike Minor. Barrios has got knocked out in the playoffs. He went into Yankee Stadium and he lost. He got knocked down pretty bad. Mike Minor's been great in the postseason. I've got the Rangers taking Game 1. Game 2, Michael Pineda going up against Ariel Jurado. Pineda's been awful this season. Jurado's been great. None of them have postseason experience. I've got the Rangers, so taking a 2-0 series lead. Game 3 back in Texas. Kyle Gibson going up against Lance Lynn. Lynn has that postseason experience. Gibson does not. I've got the Rangers taking a commanding 3-0 series lead. Game 4, Jake Odorizzi going up against Adrian Sampson. Adrian Sampson has definitely cooled down since last week. Now it's a 4.21 ERA in the season. Odorizzi a 2.24 ERA. I've got the Twins in that, making it a 3-1, and then we don't revisit pitching matchups, and you look at who leads each team. We don't include starting pitchers, so you've got Jorge Polanco, Byron Buxton, and Max Kepler are clearly better than Joey Gallo, Hunter Pence, and Sean Kelly. I've got the Twins going to the World Series, winning it in 7 games. On the National League side of things, Dodgers, Brewers. Game 1, we'd see Clayton Kershaw taking on Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff has that great postseason experience. Kershaw does not. Got the Brewers taking a 1-0 series lead. Game 2, we've got Rich Hill and Zach Davies. Hill's been good, but Davies has been better. 2-0 Brewers series lead. Game 3, Walker Buehler taking on Jimmy Nelson. Nelson doesn't have postseason experience. Buehler has pretty decent. 2-1. Still Brewers lead. Game 4, Hyunjin Ryu going up against Chase Anderson. Ryu's been shaky in the postseason, but Anderson doesn't have experience. Got the Dodgers knitting up the series. We don't revisit pitching matchups, so who leads each team? For the Dodgers, it's Cody Bellinger and Max Muncy. In my opinion, they're better than Christian Yelich and Mike Moustakas. So I've got the Dodgers winning this in 6, going to take on the Twins in the World Series. So we've got a completely different World Series than we had last week. Last week it was Brewers and the Rangers. Brewers winning in 7. My opinions can change, and they're changing this week. We've got Twins and the Dodgers. The Twins would have home field advantage because they currently have the better record, sitting at 47-22, while the Dodgers sit a game back of them at 47-24, tied in the win column, but they are 2 back in the loss column. So Game 1, we'd see Michael Pineda going up against Clayton Kershaw. The reason we'd see Pineda rather than Barrios is because that Twins-Yankees series, would it be Yankees? Yeah, the Twins-Rangers series, my bad, would have gone 7 games. So game 1, we would see Pineda going up against Kershaw. Pineda doesn't have postseason experience. Kershaw does. I've got Kershaw and the Dodgers taking this one 1-0 lead. Game 2, Jose Barrios going up against Rich Hill. Barrios has been knocked around in the postseason. Hill's been great. I've got the Dodgers taking a 2-0 series lead.